bought and sold loads.
I'm just hearing bare figures, boy.
Figures. That's the game.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Numbers.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I'm gonna go back to parts of what you just said, because you just listed off, my brother just listed off just achievements. Just like, boom, boom. Yo, my people, it's your boy Trist Rap City. I've been waiting to say that for so many months. And I'm back with another episode of the Brand Therapy Podcast. This is the new season, first episode. We are live in the UAE, Dubai, which is where we're going to be filming the rest of this season. As you know, the Brand Therapy Podcast, where we discuss business, brands, and experience in a therapeutic fashion. And we're back, baby. So listen, first episode. To give you a bit of an idea, part of the reason why this was the angle I chose to go was, number one, the state of the economy at the moment. As a lot of you know, whether you're looking from UAE, UK, anywhere else in the world, we're a bit like that at the moment. We're not sure if we're coming or going. So that was the first aspect. The second was also, I started to see like a lot of content popping up. Shout out my guy Made You Think. There was a lot of content popping up on his page in regards to like just gems, but from a different sector to your personal development, motivation and mindset stuff that you guys know me for. And I looked into it and it turned out to be my guy, Property By Kazy. So well, go on, my guy. Yeah, first and foremost, love for obviously giving me the time. Yeah, man, like I said, like I don't really have conversations with people just for the sake of it. Like the main reason why I thought, yeah, it would be the time now is obviously I see your content game. So that's the first thing. And from a branding point of view, I was like, yeah, this makes so much sense because I feel like the industry, when I say the industry, just like urban media needs that. Like, it's often the same stuff, your music, your business, your motivation's even common now. But no one was really kicking game about property. That's the first thing. Then it was also in like a very relatable way. Like, for me, I'm someone, yeah, like, so I invest in like crypto and stocks and other markets. And the only way I can do that is by hearing someone explain it to me, like, yeah, so basically this company grabbed that and them man was on, like, do you get it? Like, in a way that I understand. Yeah, so obviously I saw that. Then I took a look at your page further. And bro, I'm not gonna lie, like I've never known what you did prior to this period. So obviously you had to come and talk to us and just let us know firstly, like explain who you are for people who don't have a clue.
Okay, so I'm Kazeem, Kazeem, you know what I mean? But I'm the face of Property By Kazy. I'm a property developer focused in Southeast London, doing development. So whether that be flips, new builds, conversions, HMOs and a rent-to-rent company as well. So in terms of my kind of headline numbers, I've worked in property for the last 7 to 8 years, built a rent-to-rent company with a turnover of about £1 million, done probably 30 to 40 projects, total sort of GDV, which is a gross development value, about 12.5 million, have raised $1 million in private equity funding. So bought and sold loads.
I'm just hearing bare figures, boy. Figures.
That's the game.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Numbers.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I'm gonna go back to parts of what you just said, because you just listed off, my brother just listed off just achievements. Just like, boom, boom, boom. So let's go back, go one by one on what you just listed. Not in the order, but let's go through a few things that your company's done and you've done.
Okay, so to start with is, flips.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, a flip is basically when you buy a property with the intention to sell it within a short period of time. Often you spend money to improve the condition and you make your margin from the difference between your sales price, your expenses and what you sell it for.
Got you. So probably the simplest way.
It's from a risk strategy, it's not necessarily the simplest, but from a just as an actionable, it's kind of like the most obvious to explain.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You buy low, you sell high.
Yeah.
It's classic
Yeah.
sales. So my strategy originally was just buying somewhere that needed work. So, your typical maybe 1-bedroom flat, not in a great condition, hasn't been looked after, may have been lived in for a long time, whether that be on a private market, whether that be at auction, whether that be like sort of direct to a vendor, so the seller. Buying it, spending a certain amount of money on the property, remarketing it, normally within a period of 6 to 8 months, with the goal to obviously make money. Now that was kind of my initial strategy, and whilst it did work, I was fortunate at a time that I was doing that while the market was very strong. So I was buying, and regardless of what I was doing, prices were kind of going up anyway. So what I realized quickly is, away from just buying somewhere and just tidying it up, I created a strategy where I was actually adding value from the conception of buying the property. So looking at properties with more potential to add value. So whether that be like reconfiguration of the layout to make for a more attractive design. I know sort of where I'm from, a lot of the properties, particularly the Victorian properties, had a layout where the bathroom sort of came after the kitchen on the ground floor, 1-bedroom flat. So moving that around to make it more attractive. Just added a lot of
modernizing
value for the first time buyer. Also changing layouts as well. So making maybe making a 1-bedroom flat, a 2-bedroom flat, sort of, again, the areas that I operate in, that may be the difference between a 1-bed and a 2-bed is about £40,000. So if you can do that just through some stub partitions, some slight changes in design, you're adding value instantly. And then again, just basically creating a strategy. And once you've realized something works, it's very much of a cookie cutter formula, in that you just repeat that.
So did you always start, so like, did you come up thinking, yeah, property is what I was going to do? Did you do your first one just for yourself, or did you always want to do it as a business, like as a service? Because you provide it as a service now, right?
So it's multifaceted in that I do it for myself, and that's my main thing, that I'm a property developer. However, during downtime, because I've built up a team of builders, I now provide those services to other people. So let's say you bought your first home and you don't necessarily have the experience or the build team to be able to build out. You can approach us and say, look, we want to do a double-story extension, we want to do a loft conversion, we want to completely refurb, and we can quote you effectively as a contractor. So that kind of, for me, it helps with cash flow, because I'm making money from just being paid, as opposed to investing money, which is what you're doing when you're a developer. But in regards to your question, I didn't initially... I think I always wanted to get involved in property, but that wasn't necessarily my forte. I did a few different things before.
What did you study?
So I studied economics. So I think, although I worked in finance for about 6 months and realised that it wasn't really for me.
What part of finance did you work in?
So I worked in asset management. Which, again, entry level, because it was just out of university. But yeah, it was more so just the structure. I like, to be able to kind of determine my days when I'm... The
freedom and the flexibility.
Exactly. So for me, the 9 to 5 just didn't work well for me. So I had a few other ventures. I had a shisha business, shisha bar. But again, time-wise, that was the hours that I was there. I feel like you was quite early with that as well. Yes.
Like that, what year was that?
The shisha business, I think, was 2008.
Yeah, that was Elephant and Castle.
Yeah. Like, with that as well, it was a case of identifying opportunity. The smoking ban had come in not long before that. So what I sort of identified was loads of nightclubs, because smoking's now banned inside, created these really nice big outdoor smoking areas, but just for smoking. It wasn't generating any revenue. So what I did was approach nightclubs and say, look, I'll provide shisha in your venue, but I'm saying I'm doing it for free.
Okay.
So they looked at it that, well, we can now put on our flyer, we've got shisha.
Yeah.
So there was no additional cost to them.
So you was proper ahead of the game with that, innit? Because shisha, but I remember like when you was opening that, and I don't even think I even really understood what shisha was, bro, to be honest.
Like the margins in shisha, the markups.
Oh yeah, I know now.
Then, like 1,000% markup.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Did some festivals, that was actually just as growing up, just going to festivals and doing 24-hour shisha tents.
Yeah, sick.
Amazing, stuff like the festival, really good experience. From a business perspective, worked really well. And some of that kind of allowed me to piggyback and say off that and say, okay, look, you know what, piggyback off the back of that and get into other industries, which was probably it. Cool.
So one of the things that you mentioned, like for this conversation, I'm gonna just pretend like I don't know anything about property, just because I want my audience to get game from this. Like there's so many things that you said within your content, like, as I say, made you think, use that, which now I find that was one episode for so long, and I know why he would have, because there was so much gems in there, so much for people to work with. So you mentioned HMO, which is a term that's often thrown around the property market. For someone who has no clue, what is a HMO in the simplest way?
HMO is an acronym which means House of Multiple Occupancy. So effectively, that's a dwelling that's occupied by different people, like from different households. So most typically now, it's a house that's split up into rooms with either shared kitchen, shared bathrooms, maybe en suites. one of the reasons people do that is because they're looking at yield. So for example, 3-bedroom house in Croydon may rent for £1,400 a month. But then if you took that same 3-bedroom house that typically has 2 reception rooms, you'd be able to rent out as 5 bedrooms with a shared kitchen, maybe 1 or 2 shared bathrooms. The rental amount for those rooms is £600 per month, so which would include bills. But even by the time you take out your expenses of maybe £100 a room, you're still looking at a gross rent of £2,500.
Yeah.
So you've increased the profitability in your rent roll of that property by 50%.
Yeah.
So that's a HMO.
So what makes it a HMO? Just because it's now got different. So it's like basically the houses where you'd go in and it'd be 1 flat ground floor.
So HMO it's not self-contained units.
Okay, got you.
Similar to, I think the thing that most people would understand it is a student accommodation. Like not so much the university halls, but when you go out maybe 2nd, 3rd year and rent a house, you have a room in the house, but then bathrooms, kitchens are all shared. Now, to get your house to be able to be compliant with, like, to be a HMO, you need to make sure you cover like the health and safety standards. So you need to have fire doors, fire alarms, smoke strips, make sure that you've got the correct amenity space for the number of people that you have. There's different types of HMOs. So you've got just a HMO license, which is where it's, generally speaking, it's 5 or less people, depending on the borough, 5 or less people, it's just licensable. When you go over 6, or if the area's got something called Article 4, which means you need full planning permission for any HMO, you have to go down a full planning application, which is the same as if you were going to convert something into self-contained flats.
Got you. All right, cool. So going back to some of the things that you've listed, like you mentioned that you had been responsible for raising, what was the figure?
Private equity fund, 1 million.
So talk us through that. Like, what was that project based? Like, obviously for what you can disclose and what you can't. What was the project?
It's pretty straightforward. It wasn't for one project. It was for multiple projects, but effectively, there's only our capital as a property investor is a finite resource. We only ever have a certain amount of, hopefully we'd hope at some point we'd only have a certain amount and the pot's unlimited. But for now, we only have a certain amount of capital available. So somebody may offer me a great deal as a house, as a flat to buy, but in some instances, I may have already allocated capital to different projects.
Got you.
So in terms of raising private equity funding, what I would do is go and tender to people that want to invest. They may be looking at, they're currently only achieving 1%, if that, from interest from their bank or an ISA. So I'd say, look, do you know what I'll do? Is I'll offer you an option to invest, or I'll take a loan from you of £100,000, maybe over a period of 12 months, and offer them a fixed return. So I've currently, at the moment, I have no funding outstanding. I've paid, the interest as long as repaid the capital sum to all of those investors. I've done multiple projects. And
they could obviously flip with you then. So if I'm just sitting there and I've got money, but I'm not necessarily maybe not got the time, haven't thought about actually like actioning anything, but the money's there, you would basically take that money off me, go and put it into a project that you obviously know, I'm assuming that you know what you're going to flip, you know what you're going to make from that, and then I would get a fixed return monthly, quarterly, or just depending?
Generally speaking, it's annually. However, it just really depends on the structure. Some people say, can I have it monthly? And because of where I am now, that I've built up a portfolio that rent rolls a decent amount, we could give it to you monthly, we could give it to you quarterly or annually, or you can roll it over at the end of the term of your agreement. So that's kind of one way, which is a fixed return. On larger scale projects, I've also done joint ventures with people, because we have to remember is at a different stage, people require different returns. If you've made maybe millions, the 8% maybe isn't as attractive to you. So you may say, okay, do you know what? I don't want to give you just the 100,000. I want to give you 500,000, but I actually want to be a partner within the venture. So we would become joint venture partners, so a JV, and we would set up what's normally called like an SPV, so a special purpose vehicle company. We would buy the property in that name, and then we'd agree a profit share between ourselves. So they wouldn't be paid a fixed return. They would actually have a percentage of the deals of the profit.
So to become a business partner of yours, basically, with the project.
For that project.
Something that a lot of my friends do is like they get properties outside of London. Like, I don't know if this is something that's popping now, because obviously I don't know the property market at the moment, especially in the UK. But they get properties like outside London, buy like the whole building, for example, and then split it all up and do it like near like uni places and stuff like this. What's the main reason, like, that you would say that would be a good investment, and what type of people, what position do you have to be in to be able to do something like that?
So in terms of buying a building and splitting it up, you can do that outside of London, you can do that in London. It really just depends on the amount of capital that you have to do it. So I mainly focus in London just because I love being within touching distance of my properties. I project manage all of my own developments as well. So it just means in terms of splitting my time, it's a lot easier.
Is London good right now, though? What is London like right now from a property point of view?
For me, there's a lot of different factors, that's a whole different question. Around obviously the pandemic, Brexit.
We're gonna definitely touch on that.
So I'll get into kind of where London is heading down the line, but London historically, has always been really strong. So there'll be dips and troughs, but it's like a long-term investment that over the time it's only gone up. It's gone down for little periods. There's been like points of sort of stagnated growth where it's been a little bit slower, but long-term, it's always been a safe bet. Reason being is just basic supply and demand. Your capital cities, London, Paris, New York, places in California, because there's so much demand to live in these areas, it's just, it's just going up. So, London's always been good for me. It's always been safe. And also knowing your market, like something that, you sort of showed me as well. The difference between knowing your market, you know exactly what they'll pay for something. So like with whether it be events, if you know an area, you know exactly what they'll pay for a ticket price. You know how much you can pay for a venue because you know how much you can make off the back end. And for me in property, it's the same. I know the difference. Like, for example, if I look at a property in Crystal Palace, one flat might be 400,000 and one might be 500. But the one that's 500 is a way better deal because even though they're the same flat, this one's in the right catchment areas for the school. It's closer to the transport links. It's just a preferred road. It's not a through road. It's just, I know that road is worth the money. And that's kind of why I've always focused on areas that I know because knowledge is king. In regards to your question about conversions are something that as somebody getting into property quite, recently, I wouldn't recommend undertaking straight away just because there's so much sort of compliance stuff and so much you need to know in regards to conversions and you need to know different planning laws and requirements that if you're buying something on the basis that it can be converted, unless you've got a backup plan of it maybe refurbishing it, that you've got kind of a lot of risk for an initial deal. But if you do get planning, it can be an amazing deal. Like I can kind of talk you through numbers and some stuff that I've done. Bought a house in Croydon, really good price at the time. So it's about sort of 2016. Bought the house for 450,000. Again, it did have the thing that if it didn't work as flats, then as a house refurbished, worst case we kind of break even. Went in for what's called pre-planning. So that's where you go speak to the council, effectively be like, look, I've got these plans. What do you think of them? Like, are you like? And within reason, they'll tell you, no, wait. We kind of like that, or we like it, but we want you to change this and take the balconies off because they're not in suiting with the local area, etc. So we did that, went to pre-planning. Results, originally got planning for 3 flats. So 3 flats are GDV, which is like gross development value would have been.
What does that mean?
So that is the total cost, like what the total value that everything you've built out will cost that we'll be able to sell for at the end of what.
Okay, got you.
Originally, we were looking at about 900,000 with a build cost of about 180,000. So by the time we take into account the cost of finance, which again is something we need to touch on because finance is so important in different ways to finance these projects. Looking at sort of returns of slightly under 200,000. But again, with us, we know it's about pushing the boat out. What can you do? So rather than settle for the 3 flats, we actually said, you know what? We sat on the project for another, I think it was about 9 months. So paying 9 months of interest. I think it cost about £18,000 in interest, but ended up getting planning for 4 flats.
Okay, sick.
4 flat.
It's a whole another set of income, basically.
That 4 flat pushed the total GDV up to about 1.2 million. Again, the build cost didn't really shift that drastically. Build costs were probably another 50,000, let's say. But obviously the flat itself was an extra 300,000. So even with the added interest, the added build cost, it took the total profitability.
Got you. you gotta have the mindset for that. Like you gotta have the long-term mindset for that rather than think about the quick bag now.
Sometimes don't get me wrong, sometimes I've done the total opposite.
Yeah.
I've sat down and I've spoken to my architect and I've said, like, what will go through quickly? Because there's also the time value of money concept.
Yeah. Facts. Yeah.
Would you rather take £100 now or £100 in a year's time?
Yeah.
Or even £100 now or £110? You have to work out
of course.
what are you going to do with that money? Because again, your what you've got to work with is limited. So sometimes you're better off taking that money, flipping it, making a certain amount over 6 months and going again, rather than it's just also always working about what's my risk, what's my exposure for maybe taking a little bit longer.
Got you. Something that like, so for me, in like about 2012, I started working in the city. So I came up in like the financial square miles, they call it, for like 5-6 years. And like, young guys like earning good money, so like what would happen is like we'd all start developing our lives amongst each other. So you got like offices of 20, 30 people. Someone will make their first 10 grand, first 20 grand, first 30, whatever it may be. And you'd see like extreme heights as well at very young ages, yeah. And like obviously coming from certain backgrounds, like some people would be in the office and some would think, yeah, like when I get one of my first 3 goals is I want to buy a house, I want to buy my mum's house. Then other people would be like, I'm just trying to buy like a watch or a car or whatever it may be. With the way that the world shifted, yeah, and there's now, I would say, like I said this to my friend the other day, there's so many different ways to make money now. Like when I think about 2012, this time I'm talking about, bro, like, I don't know where everyone started making money. Because back then, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like you going through your social media and everyone's doing this, that, and the other. Would you say now, in the current climate, it's still a thing of, and I know it's still good investment, but would you say right now it's still a thing of make your first 100 bags, go buy a property? Like, and I know it's hard, like you're gonna be biased because it's your game, but step out of it if you can. Or would you still say that?
I think my thing is always risk and reward, because you could go and make your first 100 grand and you could go and buy a watch, but it's all about how, like, what you buy. Do you get it retail? Do you get a watch that's an investment? Is the watch, is that watch price volatile, for example? Or do you want to invest in a business? But do you have the time to invest in a business? Kind of looking at placing yourself in exactly, like, it's this scenario.
Like what works for you. Yeah.
I wouldn't begrudge anybody that went to go and, there's 2 things. There's obviously what are you doing? Are you spending that money for enjoyment? Are you spending that money for investment? Are you spending that money, is there a balance of the 2?
Yeah.
What exactly are you trying to do? I mean, for me, like you said, I'm biased. It's my game. So I also, because I have the expertise, I can execute whatever I want to do, that bit better. And also, I have the time to go and do it.
I think also like a factor that I found, and I find even like with my audience, like I put questions out there today for you, and something that a lot of the questions fitted in within what I'm about to say, like a lot of it is just education. So like, for example, I looked at the stock market for years, bro. Like I came up next to so many successful stock traders, never once at that time thought to jump in because it was just too like, what is all that? But the idea of going to buy a watch at retail and then maybe selling it next year and making a 5-6 quid, whatever it may be, made simple sense to me. Same with crypto. The reason I like crypto a lot more than other investment, I just understand it. It's simple. I think one thing that what I found with property, and this is like I think when I saw your content, I was thinking, this can kind of bridge this gap, is a lot of people don't understand it. So it's like, okay, what do I do? Like literally, like what do I do? I've got, obviously I understand it, but for example, I don't. I've got like 50 grand saved up. Like, I don't know, in the current climate, what can I do with that? What's the steps? Like give me a brief summary of like who do I speak to? I'm just a normal man. I don't know you. I don't know no one. I just got 50 grand. Like I'm not even flexy or flying. I've just saved my calm 50 bags. What the hell do I do?
Okay, so in terms of that, in terms of getting into property in the first case, sometimes one of the best ways to get into property is just through your own home. So it's not like an investment, it's not a flip, but there's a few reasons for that. When you buy your first home, I mean, again, current market's slightly different, but typically speaking, you can get a 10% mortgage, like 10% deposit, 10% money down. So you want to go and buy a house for 300,000, you've got to put 10% in. So that's £30,000.
Yeah.
There was actually 5% mortgages now in the current market because everything's that bit more volatile. Particularly if people on furlough, it's looking at more like 15%. But if we say 10% as a standard.
And that's with A1 credit?
It's not so much, do you know what, with property, it's, you can't have really adverse credit. So you can't have had late payments or non-payments within the last 12 months. You have to have a decent, decent payment, that sort of decent credit history.
I'm going to jump in a lot more this part because I want it to just, I know what I want for people. If I'm in that situation, the credit isn't the best, but the money's there, what would you advise that someone would do?
Firstly, like, if the credit's not the best, work on that credit. Because credit is what allows you to leverage, and leveraging your money is what's going to make you more money in the long term. Because if you've got £50,000 but I've got bad credit, you only have £50,000. I've got £50,000 and I have good credit. I have the exposure to work on 250,000.
Love that.
What I can now do is, even if I'm looking at ROI, like, so return on investment, I get my return on investment on that whole 250. So even if I'm trying to make a return of 10%, I might make 25,000. Where your return on investment at the 50,000.
That's it.
So you have to leverage what you have, and it's the same way we talked about, like, you've only got a certain amount of time or a certain amount of money or a certain credit file. So definitely, I would say, as a starting point, before anything else, and this is one thing that I wish I knew at an earlier stage, because it's not just on how much you can borrow, but it's also on the price of how much they charge you to borrow, because it's all about risk and reward. When that lender comes to look at you and looks at you and says, "Oh, let me look at this. Okay, you know what? You've missed a couple of payments. You paid late that time. What they're gonna say to you is, we're gonna charge you 5% is gonna be your annual interest rate. Oh, Kaz. Oh, you've been spot on. You paid your credit card. You've done. Do you know what I mean? You've done everything you had to do. They're gonna turn around and say, look, we'll give you 1.9%. So that difference is, when you're borrowing money, it's gonna cost you way more. And even if you can afford it, that comes out of your bottom line, especially as an investment, or even if it's not an investment, that comes out of your disposable income, which is going to detract from your savings in the long term.
I feel with something like this, what you just said, as well, that I think is important is that and it's something I'm even going to touch on with you as well. There's like, you've got to have a mindset shift. Like, what I mean by that is you have to think long term. So for example, you could sit there and think, this person's giving me 100 bags, this person's giving me 100 bags, this person, but the interest rate to a lot of people that haven't got the financial literacy doesn't even matter, because they're just seeing the 100 bags and they're just thinking now. Whereas to do like what you do, or just to even have a successful investment portfolio, you've got to think about, okay, that's fine that I'm getting 100 bags, but I'm getting it at the cost of this, which is going to sting me then. And if I miss that, it's going to cost me that. And I could end up paying back 150 grand just because I'm not mentally ready. Do you get what I mean?
That's where, in property, one thing is, it's a numbers game. So as much as it might be nice and I showcase I've done this house and it looks so nice, or I've done X, Y, or Z, it's the spreadsheet that I always go back to, because the spreadsheet says bought for this much, spent this much, finance cost this much. And when you tweak those numbers, sometimes it doesn't work. And that's what you always have to go back to. So when you look at your finance costs, and you look at, because you can do an amazing property that looks nice. If it doesn't make you any money, it doesn't make you any money.
Do you know what? It's funny you say that, because you see, like, now on social media, like, it's become a big thing, innit? Like, like, what you're doing is a big thing now. Like, there's a lot of new pages popping out. Like, I saw one the other day, like, it was a girl in South London. The place looked mad. It had like a football like pitch inside the house. It looks all sick, like very aesthetically pleasing for Instagram, but you don't have a clue what's behind that.
And that's the other thing. I don't know whether or not that house made money, didn't make money, etc. But in property, areas have a ceiling. So you know that it doesn't matter what I do in a certain house or certain flat. If no house on that road is ever sold for more than 700,000, there's no point in going to spend £100 square meter on, luxury marble tiles, hardwood floor, and X, Y, Z. It's like, it's the same thing about knowing your target market. There's only so much you can spend on different areas. So when I do that, I have like a real guide for my refurbishments. And as a sort of headline number, I always say that wherever I'm trying to sell the property for, as like a guideline, as a straight refurbishment, I would spend a maximum of 10%. Of that value.
Got you. I got you.
Moves depending on exactly what you're doing, but as a sort of...
That's like when we do an event, like you'd want the outgoings to be covered by, let's say, for example, 50 people buying tickets, so that you know that you're boom, and everything else is
There's always stuff that can move, because stuff where, like, this is somewhere that's going to be real table orientated, and it's not so much tickets, and there's going to be different, like, where you
of course,
guide, But if you have that as a stating piece, at least you kind of know how
Something to work with, yeah.
Work something off the bat.
So like on the route for, let's say for example, like a younger generation, people that are making money, what if you had to give them like 3 main things to make sure that they're focused on now if they do want to get into your position, or even if not, to have a portfolio, but just to be able to buy a house, because it's such a milestone for, especially like I mean, it's changing. The world's changing right now. So a lot of people are looking at other investments. And nowadays, like the younger generation, they're not as, for our generation, it was like, if you don't buy a property, you're a failure, bro. I had that pressure coming up, bro.
They say now, generation rent, that it's dropped from 50% of like 30 plus owning a house down to about 30% now.
Oh, is it? Yeah. So the younger generation are looking at different things now, isn't it?
I think it's just more so people like the idea of flexibility.
Yeah.
So now, how many people don't own a car because you can Uber?
Yeah.
They don't buy Sky. They'll just get Netflix or just
it's freedom, innit?
So there is definitely an added value to flexibility now.
How are you? I'm gonna you just took me somewhere else. How are you gonna, like, from a business point of view? Not even just you, but how can the digital world be incorporated with property? Can it happen? Like, do you think it can happen?
I mean, there's lots of ways that it already does happen. So, for example, like the pandemic is changing mindsets. So
let's talk on that.
So there's so many more, like, for example, from an estate agent, I've got, friends that run estate agents. The idea of virtual viewings now. So 360 video tours, you take a walkthrough of the property.
But I prefer that, bro. Yes, I prefer it. Saves so much time for the consumer, bro. Obviously, if you're buying, it's different. But you see, like, for me, when it comes to like rental properties, and especially like, bro, I've seen every possible rental property in Fulham, Chelsea, Battersea, like that whole little area, Southwest London. So more time for me, it was just send me the video. Even coming to Dubai, bro, like, I just know what I'm looking for, but that's just as a rental of like new builds. It's a lot more filtered. For when you're looking at properties that you want to buy and stuff, I would assume that you want to be hands-on.
And then, but even people were still happy, because a lot of people that buy somewhere, remember, that's people's primary investment. When somebody buys their first home, even if it's their second home, they never spent that much money on anything before. So the idea of going to, let's even say, buy a pair of trainers. Like, it's the most expensive pair of trainers you buy. To buy them online.
100%.
So the tangible element of actually feeling and touching something is hard to beat. However, just in terms of initially first viewing online, like 360 video tours, etc. In terms of integration from a development perspective as well, knowing your target market. So when I'm doing conversions now, like 1-bedroom flats that are going to be bought by first-time buyers, young professionals, young couples, integrating technology into those. So whether it's, Alexa, controlled lighting, more home automation. So when you go to a nice hotel in Dubai, you have your blinds, your TV, your stuff all linked up. Like I said, trying to integrate technology into properties as well, because it doesn't cost loads if you do it on conception. But trying to do it as a sort of aftermarket, it costs a lot more. So doing stuff like that as well really helps to focus on your target market.
So right now with the pandemic, dumb time to buy, good time to buy, capitalize, not?
So and this is just my personal sort of viewpoint on it. So with the pandemic at the moment, the market currently is being propped up by the stamp duty freeze, which means, for those that don't know, stamp duty is effectively a tax on buying a home. At the moment for as your residential house, it's up to 500,000. They've scrapped those fees, so you're potentially saving £15,000 in cash. So that's been scrapped. So people rushing to go out and buy has kind of slightly artificially inflated the market. We've also got the furlough scheme, which is still running, which means even people that are not at work are still getting paid. But that is set to end, I think, in April, sort of 2021. So that's going to end. The home buyer scheme is going to end. A lot of the other schemes like the mortgage payment holidays, also a lot of bounce back loans and C-bills, so coronavirus business interruption loans, they were taken out in May last year. Those payments are going to having to start be repaid because of interest-free and payment holiday terms. So all of those things potentially putting pressure, like downwards pressure on the economy, means that you could actually see, some reduction in house prices, because there's going to be a lot more people maybe having to sell their home as they're not, making as much money as they once were, or they personally having to downsize because they can't afford the bills they once could.
Got you.
So if there's a lot more properties on the market, there's less demand, more supply, prices could potentially dip. So, potentially there is a dip in the
So maybe wait. So say if you were looking to buy, probably what's coming is a better time.
It's a trade-off because if you're buying your first home, you could be saving 15,000 in the stamp duty.
Yeah, got you.
Yourself, is that 15,000 I'm saving, is that going to outweigh maybe what I could negotiate in a better price a little bit down the line? So I think if you have cash at the moment, so if you're looking to buy, you haven't got a property to sell, it may be a good time to wait. I'd probably say at least until June, July, see where the market is then, see where once you sort of started to see the trickle down effect of those various factors we just spoken about, but once you've seen that affect the market, potentially you'd be in a position to negotiate a better price as well.
All right, cool. We had, as I said, I put out on my social media a few questions, like mainly because I think anyone who follows my podcast as well will know this is like a very, I'd say a unique conversation for me, because usually it's like a lot more like just banter and we're talking about what's going on the internet. No, you're funny. You're my guy differently. But I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even want that though. Like I wanted people to just like digest so much that they can go away and act on. Because right now, bro, I'm not gonna lie, with the pandemic, there's a lot of obviously idle time for people. So people are now like, I don't know if you, like, do you invest in other markets or just stay in property?
Little bit in crypto, little bit in stocks.
But you're aware of what's going on and stuff.
Not trading, more like longer term investments. Because again, it's about, I don't have the expertise to be buying, selling. More involved. So
So like one thing I'm noticing is like people have got the time to learn new skills, which is good, and a lot of people have got more of an interest in, like even like yesterday, like I had this conversation online, like I hate this narrative of, because there's been like a stock boom in the last 48 hours, like everyone's kind of been rushing to the stock market, people who don't ever think about the stock market. But from my point of view, that's amazing. Like people that have no clue about these things to start talking about these things because they're social trends is amazing, because these are only things that are going to better our minds and better our pockets if you do it the right way. Do you know what I'm saying? So people like jumping on the barrier now of like, I want to get in property because we've got this time. I feel like this is a great time, even though the world is like moving mad, for people to learn from this episode and be like, all right, cool. So I've got that. Now I can go and apply that to this. And I didn't want it to be like shits and giggles. You get me? I wanted people to have takeaways. So some of the questions that came up, first and foremost, hold on, let me bring it up. So one of them was, can you get into the property game with less than 10K investment in London and some suggested strategies?
So in terms of getting into property in London, realistically, you can't get into property in terms of can you buy your first home. However, I kind of have put together a few strategies that if you want to get into property development, that with not a lot of capital, you could use to build bridges towards getting into property. So one of those is called rent to rent. So effectively, that's where you as an individual, you can set up a company where you go out and rent properties from landlords, from private landlords. You rent them with the view to make a margin for renting them out for more. So you can do that either through...
Are you allowed to do that, yeah?
So you know the whole
kind of like subletting.
So the whole idea of subletting is perfectly legal as long as you have consent. So you would be approaching with like either a corporate let contract, so you'd be approaching a landlord. So
just as long as you're transparent, basically, you let them know from the jump,
So that was one of the ways. So I set up a company called Surance as a co-founder. I actually, based on the current markets, I exited and was bought out of the company at the end of last year. But that was a rent-to-rent company where we built up a cash flow of £1 million a year. Now, that was a strategy that I got into without a high level of investment. Because I'll give you an example of a typical deal. Now, let's say I go and approach you as the landlord. You've got this house that maybe either you're struggling to rent, or it's just renting for a certain amount. You've had some problem tenants. You've had void periods where the property's empty. Maybe they've damaged your property and had quite high repair bills. Maybe you're just quite a busy person. You don't really want to deal with all that oversight. So I would approach you and say, look, do you know what? I'm X. I'm going to look after your property. So with us, we had a value proposition. We're adding value. So we're saying we're going to rent the property either at market rent or slightly higher. So we'll give you your £1,400. But rather than paying an agent 10% or self-managing, which cuts into your time, we'll give you the full amount. We'll then deal with all the repairs, and it's a guaranteed rent. So whether the property is full or vacant, we as a company are responsible.
Okay.
We would then go out and get that HMO license.
Yeah.
Do the relevant.
So it's kind of like owning without owning.
So do the sort of, it's like, because we would have long-term contracts as well.
Yeah,
3 to
yeah.
5 years. So we may have an initial financial outlay of £5,000 by the time we've done, you know, a light refurb, so painting, decorating, tidied up a few things, made it HMO compliant, so fire doors, smoke alarms, etc., and then furnished the property. So we may have spent £5,000. So we're £5,000 down of that £10,000 we had.
Yeah.
But now we're now renting the property out for considerably more than we're paying in rent. So
Got you.
let's say we're cash flowing £800 a month. If we're cash flowing £800 a month, go on, let me do maths real quick. Take like,
Wait, for how many months?
How many months are it going to take to make back your £5,000?
About. Wait. How many months?
How many months if you make £800 profit?
Yeah, about 9.
Nine?
No, about 7. About 7. About 7. Yeah. About 7. Yeah.
7 to 8 months, you make back your principal investment. Now I mentioned we had those properties for 3 to 5 year contracts. So that means after that,
it's
all
profit.
And it's
Yeah.
cash flowing you a decent amount. So you've still got another £5,000 to go and get another one of those. So if you get 2 that are making you £800 a month, you're now cash flowing £1,600 a month, which means, or like from organic growth, after you've paid back those first 2 after 8 months, you could actually go and, if it takes you £5,000 to take on a deal, every, 3 to 4 months, you can take on another property.
Yeah, sick.
So that's
called
strategy.
rent to rent, yeah?
Rent to rent, so it's rent to rent. It's got guaranteed rent, corporate lets, different sort of names.
Sick.
So one idea of it is you can do it in HMOs. Some people do it in, assisted living, which is, those that need sort of help with their accommodations, different sort of ways in which to do it. But that's how we did it. And one example of how you could get into property without a lot of capital, which is one of the main barriers to entry, which is also one of the things that I've been fortunate to work well in property.
Yeah.
But I'm very conscious that it is an area that has high barriers to entry. So trying to tell people about how you can actually get into property and, break down these barriers is one kind of key thing I wanted to have in this conversation. Just thinking another area, again, I'm just kind of going through stuff that I did as well to get into the industry. So it's all about what you have to offer. So at the time I wanted to get in, I had time. I wasn't working a full-time job. So I approached an existing developer, and initially I was just a glorified delivery man. Let me learn from you. Said, okay, cool. So if he wanted something from Screwfix, wanted something from Wix, I'll go there and pick it up. If he needed some measurements from the project, needed some pictures, etc., needed just to double check, like go and make sure that they're at work. Go and make sure the builders are.
You soaked in the game. You was a good student.
I gave them my time. I gave them my time on the first deal. They saw that I actually helped the deal, helped the project run smoother. So next time I gave them a proposition. I said, you know what? Let me project manage this, but don't pay me anything. But you tell me what you're trying to make, and off like my project management, give me a percentage off the back end of how profitable the project was. Now I gave my time. I took a risk, but through that I learned loads. And
very important. That part of the journey, I have to stop you there, because that is like, I feel like to be a good teacher, you have to have been a good student. Like, and a lot of people will see that stage and be like even you saying you're a glorified driver, it's like a delivery guy, like, bro, that's probably why you can give gems now, do you know what I mean? Because you was able to just bide your time, soak in from people that were obviously doing it, they were doing quite well, I'm assuming.
It's the other thing, you got, look, one, people are paying loads of money for courses, which
courses
out there. But I got free courses.
Two, so you never done a course outside of that?
Learn through somebody else's mistakes, because they're actively doing. So do you know how expensive it can be to learn on your own time and on your own money? Like,
mistakes can
if
be
you made the
expensive.
wrong, like you don't know about the right planning application, you make a mistake in property, you could build half your house and then the building surveyor comes around and says,
have you had any mad L's like that? Or any mad obstacles, like when you've got right to the end or anything?
Do you know what? Like, I haven't had any that have been mad. So when I say that, I mean I haven't had any that I've just said this is an actual loss. I've had some stuff where costs go up, I've had like my most recent project, nice extension to the property, standard foundations, 1 meter deep. Surveyor came out and said, "Ooh, see that tree there? You have to go down 2.5 meters, have to do a subframe, all this other stuff, and it might have cost an extra £6,000. But one thing I do is my numbers, I'm quite prudent. I work on worst case scenario, always stress test my deals as well. And that's when I say, go back to your spreadsheets, do the numbers work. Don't over glamorify, like over sort of be like, oh, I want it to work.
Don't be idealistic.
So I'll look at it and add on 10% for the refurb costs.
Yeah.
Take off 10% for what I want to sell it for. So that way I kind of stress tested my deal to say, should things change, can I still make this make sense?
Sick. Another question that came through, because I want to try and get the questions answered.
Just to touch on, just to ask a couple other bits.
Yeah.
Like in terms of getting into property,
go on.
The funding. So if maybe you're not in a position yet because of like, financial constraints to be able to get into what you want to do, work in a complementary industry. So whether that be getting into an estate agent, because you'll build your network, learn about the industry, you'll learn about the market. So that's one good way. The thing I touched upon as well, a lot of the time, maximize your own home. Because your own home, whether or not, it's for you, it can also be an investment. So then when you're buying, buy with not just maybe the view of this looks really nice now, maybe buy somewhere where you can add value. Not like loads, I'm not saying you have to buy a project, but just buy somewhere, follow the money. Where are they investing in infrastructure? Where are they building a lot? Where is, the new train lines going, etc. And you can you can invest without it being an investment.
Yeah, sick. Someone said, do you think it's possible to get into property flipping in London with such high property prices? And any tips to do so with a lower budget, which you kind of covered. But do you think it's possible to get into property flipping in London? I'm sure you kind of said yeah already, innit?
Yeah, I mean, that's what
that's what you're doing. Yeah.
I'd say, like, as a numbers game, it's expensive because flipping, in terms of finance, you need to use a short-term funding method, which are effectively bridging loans or short-term loans.
Yeah.
So there, the cost of them are higher. Your deposit, you're looking at 25-30%. So in terms of numbers, to do a flip in London based on property prices, by the time you take into account your deposit, your finance costs, and your refurb costs, you're looking at maybe 130,000 as an entry sort of benchmark to get into flipping in London. But it's all about the prices within the area. So although you do have to, although it is expensive to buy, it's also expensive when you sell.
I can imagine.
It does work itself out, but there are higher barriers to entry.
What are the pros and cons of a HMO versus flipping and selling?
So, do you know one question I always get asked when people say they want to get into property? They say, yeah, I've got like 100K, I've got 50K, I've got 500K, and what should I do? And my first question is to people always, well, what are you after? Are you after rental yield or are you after capital appreciation? And naturally, both is always really to focus on one is kind of one or the other. And those two examples are polar opposites. If you're looking at a long-term investment, you're trying to build a portfolio, you don't need the money back out, then your HMOs are a good way to go because, or HMOs, to be fair, are a good way to find a balance between the two because typically in London, rental yields are 3.5% to 4% in terms of what you get as your return on your investment in London. Now, by making a property your HMO, those yields shoot right up. So you can get your 8%, you can double your return, but you can still invest in an area that has high capital returns. So that's why a lot of people do HMOs. The downside of HMOs are, although it's still one house, if you've got 5 tenants, that's 5 people that could have issues.
Yeah, 5 more risks, really.
So it's 5 more, it's a lot more of your time. So in terms of management side of things, it can be a lot more of your time. Now, you can mitigate that by giving it to a managing agent or giving it to a guaranteed rent company, but that's going to cut into your returns. So you kind of have to look at how much time do you have to do it when looking at HMO and flips. Now, flips, again, it's about sort of your raising capital short term in terms of, okay, I have this amount. If I have £100,000, I do a flip and I make 25,000. I've now got 125,000 minus whatever I paid in taxes. It's really all down to what you want to get out of the deal. Are you trying to raise capital or are you looking at sort of a more passive income stream?
I think it's so funny you say that because when people ask questions, I notice like even in my field, it's like it's always there's never a link between the question and where you are. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what works for you? Because there's not one rule for all. There's not one rule for all.
How true that is. Like, there's
that's
the
life, though, isn't it, as well?
There's the question, and there's what do you want?
Yeah. What do you want from it? Yeah.
Before I can answer your question, I have 3 more questions for you to actually...
Like even this, for example, like a question that I would have asked years ago, what would you advise for someone who wants to buy a new build? Because one thing I know from my experience, because I got involved within the Help to Buy scheme, yeah, like very early on, way before I even understood properties. It was just like, yo, Help to Buy, like, oh, like this sounds great, like, you know what I mean, yeah? Because it sounds great, like.
If somebody tells
your risk,
you can not even so much your risk, but it reduces the you know how much you need to get involved.
Yeah.
5%, and then shared ownership. If all of a sudden you can get involved in property for 20k rather than 50.
Exactly.
You're thinking, I would have had to wait, another 4 years to save X amount of money. I can go now.
But I think what I come to learn when looking at it as well was it's a trap for some people and great for some. For some people, it's almost like a credit card. Like, cause it's like you end up going like that, like rather than going like that. Yeah, you end up chasing it. Yeah.
And it is. I mean, I know that there's a lot of benefits for Help to Buy because you want to get on the ladder, you're delayed, etc. So it does make it easier, and that side of the Help to Buy scheme is great. The downside of the Help to Buy scheme is, for a developer like myself, a lot of us would call it Help to Sell. It's not Help to Buy.
Yes.
Because I do conversions. So there's quite a lot of flats, like big blocks of flats maybe on Help to Buy. There's very few nice Victorian buildings, 3-bedroom garden flat. So because I'm supplying something that there's a high level of demand for and not a lot of supply, my flat that's really on the open market worth 400,000 will sell for 450 plus on Help to Buy. So because it's on Help to Buy, they've paid a lot more. But now it's not going to be on Help to Buy when they go to resell it. So the buyer could actually end up in maybe not negative equity. Yeah. It could end up, it's not been a shrewd investment.
Yeah.
And then that also comes down to, from the buyer's perspective, the value you get out of it.
Yeah.
Because the value, for example, you get out of being able to have a really nice garden flat and somewhere for your kids to play, you might not be bothered about the fact that you've paid a bit more because you've got what you want.
Yeah. So again, it's based on the situation. Yeah.
Whether or not you're looking at your purchase from my home element or my investment, or how you choose to look at things.
What I was gonna say was, like, so new builds where you've paid your money, property manager. And like from my experience, a lot less hands-on. It's just like boom, 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 give it over. Yeah, hoping you get a good tenant, good agency, anything that needs to be done in the house, you tell the flipping concierge to go and get it sorted by the property manager, can be done. Versus what I would see as like the old school way, which is kind of what you do. Would you say, again, it just depends on where you are? I'm assuming it kind of does, isn't it? What your aim is.
There's a lot. I think a lot of that is just down to personal preference, to be fair, because some people like the idea of a big development with a concierge, because you've got maybe...
Are the yields good though? That's what I've always been interested in. Because I found a lot of the people that I've known to buy them are Asian, who don't necessarily live in the UK, that have come over, slapped it before, like some even off-plan. Like that's something I was heavily...
Off-plan stuff can be good. You can get better yield. I don't think there's a massive difference between whether it's a flat, like, your yields there. There's not a massive discrepancy between the two. Off-plan stuff, because you can get it for below market value, you can get better yields because you bought at the right price. Yeah. But I wouldn't say I think it's just a lot of it comes down to personal preference. It comes down to the difference between buying, somewhere in a new build versus buying somewhere, Victorian building, etc. Obviously, the new build it's like buying anything sort of brand new. You kind of might pay a premium for the fact that it is brand new. It's been packaged in a certain way. You go and look at the show home, you envisage, this is how mine can look if I buy that furniture and this.
It's glossy, isn't it? It's a glossy investment. It feels good. Another question that someone put out there, and I've always thought this as well. Give us like an outline on the mindset you need to do well in property.
You know what? I think good question. Naturally, I think it's being able to kind of see, but like in terms of just what you need to be able to see is seeing the potential in something. But property, there's a lot of setbacks, so you need to be kind of sort of very strong mentally, and that you're going to hear a lot of no's. It's like almost like a sales industry, in that you can't be scared of disappointment. I've had planning applications declined. I've had to go to I've had to go to appeals where I sit down and explain what I want to do. I've had, you have deals where you've got it across almost got it across the line. You spent money and then last minute you're gazumped by somebody else and you lose the deal. So I think you do have to have that mental strength that, look, stuff won't always go well in the short term, but in the long term, you know where you're going. But I think because it's quite longer term deals and investments, I think from a mindset perspective, one thing that I look at is having I've got massive dreams and goals in terms of my long-term goals, but having lots of little short-term accountability moments. Every day I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror when I go to sleep and say, I've achieved something. So whether that be getting phone calls out of the way, sending emails, and I think having to be very, very organized as well and really micromanage your time. So I have a list of emails I've sent out that I'm waiting a reply for. I don't want to leave the accountability down to somebody else to get back to me. Calls that I need to make on a daily basis, and just sort of trying to manage your time, but also pinpointing daily deliverables as well.
Love that. And what are your goals at the moment? Like, where do you want to go with this? Like, is it just the biggest portfolio? And it's kind of two questions as well. Do you want to do anything overseas? Are you doing anything overseas?
So in terms of overseas, and do you know what? I think one thing you touched on earlier is diversifying as well. They always say like trying to have 7 different. So out in Dubai, I've been back in Dubai, back and forth quite a little bit. Set up a company over here that we do luxury packaging. Totally different direction from property. Everyone might be doing property.
I was going to ask you, I was going to say to you actually, like, have you looked into the markets here? Like, what's it like?
So for me, the markets out here are a little bit too volatile. Risk and reward. I quite like to be able to manage my risk. And I don't think I can do that as much over here. So which is why I haven't got invested out here. Like, don't get me wrong, some people have made loads of money in terms of investing out here, but it's slightly different to London. With London, space is finite. So, when an area goes up, for example, when, I don't know, Crystal Palace starts to go up. I know the knock-on effect is next is kind of going to be South Norwood, because that's what we're pushing out. Whereas here, we're the desert. Like, where we are now may not be the hotspot in, let alone 5 years' time, maybe 1 year time. Dubai, they build so quickly, you can't ever look out your window and not see a crane and not see a new tower going up. So, and there's been areas that were supposed to be the next big thing that just didn't really kick off. So there's a lot more risk involved. And like I spoke about at the beginning, I like to use my knowledge base to make money. So the fact that I know somewhere, I don't think I've got to a point in London, let alone the UK, where I'm like, I need to move elsewhere because there's not enough money to make over there. So in terms of goals, sort of over the next, I wanted to build a portfolio of probably 10 million. Long-term wise, my goal sort of is about generational wealth. I'd like to build a £100 million portfolio under management that, owned and retained. Away from that as well, I think an issue that I have in property is the barriers to entry to get into property. So ideally building an investment fund to allow people, fully regulated fund to allow people to invest in property, not just at, a percentage base, but maybe at a percentage of the deal. So like a more JV style structure, a joint venture style structure, or invest at a lower sort of initial investment amount. So that's one thing I'd like to work on over the next 5 years as well.
That's sick, I like that. It opens so much opportunities as well for others to kind of get involved. So you see the portfolio you've got at the moment, is it solely you, or are you working with other people? So I know you said you got some JVs. Yeah,
so mine at the moment, everything that I've retained is just me. So my current portfolio is just me. I've done some JVs with other developers, just other people within the industry. A lot of the time, you work on people's strengths. So I've done JVs with my architect because they really knew the planning side. So we said, hey, you know what? It makes sense for us to partner up. Again, I had a business that I owned with 2 other partners that I exited last year. And that was the rent-to-rent business, which was really good for cash flow. But again, just time-wise, I said, you know what? As much as that was good, I think I'm still young enough that I'm still willing to work hard enough that I don't necessarily need the cash flow. And I really want to focus on this generational wealth side of things and trying to build capital to be able to do bigger projects. Because, one of the reasons I can't come to Dubai is barriers to entry. Dubai is, is towers. And that's something I'd like to be able to do, but I need to build the capital in the UK to be able to do stuff like that as well.
I'm gonna just throw a random one at you as well, which is when I have my podcast, I think of the people in the comments sometimes, and I just think of that. I think of that one random page, that's but what about if man wants to just buy a drip, or some that dumb question that to me is dumb, but at the same time, I understand that this is a modern day challenge for people coming up.
For me, away from the investment side of things, like if you love drip, buy drip.
Yeah, what makes you happy?
What makes you happy?
Yeah.
I can't begrudge somebody that wants to go and spend £2,000 on a pair of shoes if it makes them happy.
Yeah.
But it's the social side of things that are you doing it because
you really
like you're supposed to?
Yes.
And that's the difference for me. Like if, for example, somebody collects trains, it
Yeah.
might not be something that we do, model trains. We might look at that like, why are they? But in reality, if that makes them happy, that's what you should
facts.
do.
Yeah,
but then
facts.
away from that, you have to think, as much as that drip makes you happy, will it make you happy in the long term?
Yeah.
Because you like drip, you want it to be consistent. So wouldn't you rather forego some short-term happiness to be able to invest in drip consistently for the long term because you've created a passive income stream? And that's where it's really looking at where, like what makes you happy and where you think you're going to be with any given time. Because one thing we have to think about, we've only got a certain amount of time to make money.
Yeah, no, I love that, bro. I think the way you put that as well is very important. Like I've said this before in previous episodes, like I don't begrudge people for whatever is their vice or their thing. I think going back, like just to review this whole conversation, because conversations like this, like the reason I'm so happy to have them on my platform is I wish I had saw them when I was 18, 17. Like I didn't grow up with any real surrounding of investors, financial literacy, like thank God I got sent to a private school, so I had a very good education, a formal education, which kind of put me in good stead. But when it came to like money management, financial literacy, bro, like I learned that properly in the last few years, and I'm still learning it. Do you get what I mean? Like I look at so many things that happened before. The one blessing that I had, which I'm thankful for, is I always wanted to invest in business. So even when it wasn't like stocks, property, all this other stuff, always had a business, always had a brand, always knew about the concept of like, bro, I don't need this, because I'm trying to build something that I own. Like, ownership's always been my thing. So now it's like, I am kind of on a mission to help that. Like I'm a big fan of like Nipsey and his message, you know what I mean? Like of ownership. I see Master P the other day, like he's looking to come up with like the next Tesla. He's linked up with the old engineer of Tesla and he's looking to make his own. So stuff like that is why I design Grow Daily, why I have this platform. And obviously seeing you kind of, even though you're just being yourself and you're just like documenting your journey, you are delivering that message. Because a man's gonna look at you now from the internet and think like, yo, like that's my man if they know you, or either who's my man, and then kind of be able to relate. And one thing I would say is we would never have been able to have this conversation if you didn't create this, because you said you've been doing this for what, 6-7 years? Yeah. But I think you've been online now for what?
Yeah, do you know what? That's something in the same way you spoke about like financial literacy and understanding. For me, I was like, I'm not an internet guy.
Yeah. I get it. I always had that clash.
So I've only had like Property by Kazy and been out there for about 6 months.
Oh, for real?
But
it's like, let me jump in there as well. Something you said off camera like that threw me was you've had one episode of your show. I call it a show because to me it reminds me of like a urban Houses Under the Hammer and all them kind of shows. Like, but you only had one episode.
Yes, I've only put one episode out there. Just put different. Like, I do bits on my story, post like before and afters on my page. But in terms of actual videos,
there's only been one. And what, you got like 23,000 followers?
Yeah.
And off of one episode.
Yeah, just offered. You know what?
Bro, we need a series, bro. We need a season, bro.
Do you know what? I put some videos together, but I'm secretly an old man. The technology stuff, like, but I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause I've not been on social media and not really been in that world. But
this fly is pissing me off, bro.
This fly is on me.
Yeah, go on.
But yeah, because I didn't really know the benefit until, now you're slow, until I went out there to go and do it.
Yeah.
And the difference in some of the conversations that I've had and some of the connections and even some of the investment opportunities that I've had just from being on social media. And I think I've now seen the importance of it, and I'm kind of trying to go from strength to strength in terms of my social media, but it's made me learn about, okay, do you know what? I actually need to become my own brand, because there's people like yourself, other people that have known me for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and it's only in the last 6 months they've known that I
definitely.
So then I've had conversations where people are like, my mum's house, we was just gonna sell it at auction, but do you want to buy it, or do you want to do a joint venture? And I've come in and said, because maybe they've had things where different things where people have said, oh, we don't have the money to do it up. So
Yeah.
okay, you know,
Yeah.
let's get it appraised now. I'll spend the money to do it up. So rather than you go and give it to a stranger, whatever it sells for above the current price plus the money I put in to do it up, we split.
Yeah.
And it's, do you know what I mean? But that's I would have never had those opportunities if I hadn't have put myself out there to say, this is what I do.
Yeah, it's important, man. Like, I think it's obvious, like, which is with the name of my show, but I think taking what you do and putting it out, because the world's going digital, as we know, innit? So it's like, nowadays, that's kind of your best advertisement. And I think with you, what you have, and I'm sure you're aware, is you have such a sick opportunity to literally like capitalize on that gap, which is like having, like I said, Houses Under the Hammer and all these other shows. I don't even watch these shows, but I'm aware of them. But I would definitely watch it if it was much more relatable, someone who was local, like just someone who's more of our age group. Do you know what I mean?
It's even something that looking at it, because I actually, for one, I was actually on Homes Under the Hammer for one.
Oh, is it? Sick.
It's all right. Like, they just come, if you buy something at auction, they'll just approach you and say,
Yeah.
do it. And it's a very straightforward premise, and it's like a staple of the BBC. I think they've had like 30 odd series with like 30 episode of series like that. They're on like 90
Yeah.
But again, it's about development. And I looked at it that, do you know what? We could do this. Like, not just myself, but other developers. And
Definitely,
really build a
bro.
platform where we showcase what we do. It's a great advertising space for us, but also it just provides insight, because daily get questions like, how do I get in the industry? What can I do? And like with anything, like if someone wants to get into your industry, and they want to know about marketing, etc., read about marketing. Go and watch videos from people that are great at marketing. Follow them, ask them questions. But if we can provide that content or put like a show out there or
100%. I say to everyone, like, even when I do like brand consulting sessions, like I say, in 2021, I've been saying it for like 4 years, but nowadays, if you've got a business, your business should also always be a media company secondary. So like, yeah, your business is cutting hair, planting grass, properties, whatever it is. But in the side of that, there should be a media company. Like, you should have content churning, because in the next 3 to 5 years, people are only going to really pay attention if that's the case. And don't get me wrong, I know some industry like property, I know it's not vital. I know you can still do very well without it. But
it's do you know what it is? It's the opener. Like, rather than me having to, because I'll have people now that, you know, I said, away from doing developments, also have like a construction arm of the business where I come and do your project. But my credibility now, because you can go and see me online and see what
exactly,
and see
100%.
you can see like a testimonial from the last client I had. In terms of me having to go and sell myself, I don't have to sell myself. This is my price.
Fact.
This is what it costs, and you'll come to me and it's yes or no.
Fact.
But you've already been sold through the social side of things.
And it will create so many other opportunities with income, bro. Like, you might get to a point where you kind of want to fall back on doing the developing, and bro, like, someone might, like you said, like, they might approach you for a show and give you the big check, or you might have a podcast out of it and then you got the Spotify check. Like, that's just how I see everything. That's why this is going to be on audio, visual, like, you're going to see it on social, do you know what I'm saying? I'm capitalizing. But yeah, man, bro, this is the first episode I've had, and anyone who follows this, where I've literally just been like, is it? Like, bro, I'm a chatter, but I feel like, bro, like, when first and foremost, it's not my industry, so I wanted to learn as well. And secondly, I just feel like, bro, you got the live experience, man. So there's no, forget all the other shit. It's just like hearing it from you yourself. Someone can now, hopefully people will hit you up in the DM. Hopefully you get clients out of this and I'll get my check out of that. Like, obviously if you want to shout Property By Kazy, just quote my discount code, the Brand Therapy Podcast discount code. But nah, tell them about your pages, where they can find you and all of that good stuff that everyone does on the end of episodes.
Go get a check.
Go on, tell them where they can find you and what inspired you to start property. Nah, joking. Go on.
Nah, we're very straightforward. Property By Kazy on the Instagram, so all one word. Same as the YouTube. The YouTube, like, make sure you go subscribe for that, because right now, like Trist said, it's only one episode, but I've got a lot more content ready to go. So there'll be a lot more stuff in terms of, you know, getting into property, deals that I've done, projects that I've done, just ideas as well. Even if you're trying to renovate your own home, just looking at things like that.
Inspiration as well, innit?
Yeah, in terms of the Instagram, a lot of good content over there, and also, what's that new app?
Clubhouse. You're on the Clubhouse, yeah.
Clubhouse. You know what I mean?
Were you on? Are you having conversations with other people in property? Sick.
Property, but
yeah, that's a good angle for you, man.
Also, other people in like relatable industries. So having conversations with my mortgage brokers, with my solicitors, with my architects, plugging them all in. Just, you know what I mean, seeing how they work. People have got questions for them as well.
Yeah.
And just also people in any field where people are getting up in the morning, the 5 a.m. club, motivating ourselves to have conversations with.
Yeah.
So I want to have conversations with the guy that's just starting, and I want to have the conversation with the guy that, do you know what I mean, I want to be in 20 years' time.
Yeah, fact.
You can learn from the little guy, you can learn from the big guy, and that's what we're all trying to do.
100%. Pow! There you have it. Another episode of the Brand Therapy Podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Go tell your friend. We don't charge you for this, but what I do ask you to do is go tell your friend to tell a friend that the Brand Therapy Podcast is the best to the end. It's your boy Trist. I'm sitting here. Everybody's under the buttons. My boy Kazy. We out. Oh yeah, I was looking at the wrong camera. We out.